Kane County School Improvement Day. My name is Jennifer Bushy. I'm the Director of Kids Space here at Gail Borden. I'd like to welcome you to our facility. And I want to express our gratitude at the Regional Office of Education for bringing in our guest speaker, Kathy Baxter. Kathy has quite a tale to tell us a little bit later about her journey, so we're especially grateful she can make it with us today. I also want to express my gratitude at the Gail Borden Library staff from our crack maintenance and security crew who were able to set this room up and open up the building before hours, so thank you very much to them. And our IT department, including Matt and Laura, who's on loan from the graphics department, we are going to be streaming this event for a portion of it for those people who couldn't make it to this facility today. And last but not least, many of you know Julia Langloy. She's running around here. I don't see her in the room, but she has been a crucial part of putting this day together, so we're very appreciative to her and her husband, who was on airport duty this trip. As the official welcomer, it is my job to do some housekeeping duties. So please bear with me as I run through a short list. First of all, for restrooms, if you are new to our building, we have 3 locations for banks of restrooms. The first is right outside the door here in the cafe. The second bank of restrooms is also on the first floor underneath the stairs. Well, not quite underneath like Harry Potter underneath, but behind the stairs. And the third bank is on the second floor behind the elevators. That's a very large bank of restrooms, so just keep that in mind. I know it's on that second floor, a little bit more of a hike. If you're like me, every time the movie theater runs its announcement to mute my phone, I always think, oh, I better mute my phone. So please think of this as the movie announcement. Please set your phone to mute or to vibrate. And don't forget our cafe is available if you need to take a phone call, text a family member, if you need to have a conversation with a colleague, or if you're like me and fighting a cold and you have a coughing or sneezing jag, that's available for you out there. Our lunch today has many different options. Of course, you can order a sandwich from our cafe. You were told about that at the beginning, and Julia might have an update.
There's more menus, and at your break at 10 o'clock, you can fill them out. They'll still take menus.
So at the break at 10 o'clock, you can still fill out a lunch menu if you choose to stay in.
And we have 2 rooms upstairs for eating and for receiving your box lunch. They'll be upstairs in 2 meeting rooms that are along this east wall, along this wall. So thanks.
If you have any questions about logistics today, please look for our trustee volunteers. They are wearing book-shaped name tags. Those are folks that Judy has recruited to answer any questions, so look for those folks. During lunch, this room will be locked. However, if you do wish a tour of the Gail Borden Library, if you're new to our building or you just want to see some areas you might not know, please come back to this room at 12:30. We have staff members that will take groups around on a tour. And bear with me on a couple more things. At the end of the day, should you wish to receive CPDU certificates, please turn in your evaluation, and there'll be a process. The volunteers, I think, are part of that plan. Is that correct? Okay. And all of the books, well, a lot of the books that Kathy will be talking about are on display here. Please feel free to browse them, or if you're like me, knock them over like a domino. They are all available for checkout. Please check them out at the end of the day. You can use your Gail Borden Library card. Although I know some of you have traveled from other locations, you can register your home card with us. So if you haven't ever done that before, just do that at our registration desk. Before I conclude, does anyone have any questions? No? Well, without further ado, oh yes.
Where are the elevators?
The elevators are, if you go back out towards the main exit, go into the library, so you're going to go left into the library. You'll see the big grand staircase, and the elevators are right to the right. Right to the right. Yes. Julia, do we have any more bibliographies? Raise your hand if you need a bibliography. 1, 2, Julia. Okay, anything else? All right, well, without further ado, please welcome Kathy Baxter.
Is it on? Now is it on? Yes, it's on. Okay. I'm Kathy Baxter, and I guess I get to introduce myself. So you probably already know that the most important thing about me is that I'm originally from Walnut Grove, Minnesota, which makes me really special. But I did not play with Laura Ingalls, unfortunately, but which kids do ask, you know. They say you're from there. But, you know, that's a very big deal, because hardly anybody's from Walnut Grove, Minnesota. It's a little speck on the prairie. And I was head of children's services at the Anoka County Library in suburban Minneapolis for most of my life. And somehow I got into nonfiction. And I know a lot of you have heard me before, so I apologize if you've heard this story. It all happened in 1981. I have a diary. I used to keep a diary, and every now and then I'll see an old one and pick it up. I look, what did I do on this day that year? And I looked at it and thought, that's the day that changed my life. We had a new book at the library. It was The Titanic, Lost and Found by Judy Donnelly. It's an easy-to-read book, and I bet you all still have it if you had it back then. And the kids, you know, I took that little book on the Titanic into this room full of second graders, and the kids went berserk, you know. There was a boy in the second row who was so hyper he could hardly get the whole room is just bouncing off the walls. Were the sharks in the water? Were the sharks eating the people? You know, just all sorts of questions. I didn't think there were sharks in the water, but I had to go back to the library, check out 3 adult books on the Titanic, and go to the next school. Then I started finding every book on the Titanic I could for kids. And of course, the ones they wanted to read weren't the ones on their level. They were the ones with the most pictures. We all know how that works, right? But I started thinking, if this works, maybe I need to use more nonfiction. And I just thought, this is getting boys excited. And the girls, the whole room would be exploding when they were excited about something. Body noises is a topic, it's just unbeatable. You know, dead people, mummies, monsters, dinosaurs, vicious animals, wildcats. We all know what they are. But you go and you show the kids, and you watch the kids just get so excited. And my favorite moment was, it would be always a boy who would grab a book and say, you can't take this back to the library, we need it here. And, you know, in this desperate tone of voice. And I thought, there's something here, and I thought, we women always want to talk about fiction. And look at the population of this room. I see, how many men am I seeing? There's one pretty close to me right here. But let's see, I see one back there. There's very few of them. We are a bunch of women who like fiction, and we are talking to boys and girls, and a lot of the times the kids are really interested in nonfiction. And it behooves us to start reading some nonfiction. So I started reading some nonfiction and hauling it around the schools with me, and I was amazed how much the kids really liked the nonfiction. So after about 5 years of doing this, I wrote an article for School Library Journal, and they asked me to write a column, and that was 18 years ago, and my column is in this month's issue. I mean, you know, it's just, I can't, all the things that then people have started asking me to give talks about nonfiction, and I really had to up the reading of nonfiction. It just got away from me, and now I read nonfiction all the time. And I thought one of the things I want to tell you today is how I pick the books, and I've got a slide that says that. First of all, for a while, I had publishers sending me books, and they'd send me lots of times everything they published, even board books. My best friend would say, I need some books for a baby shower. Will you give them to me? You know how we use our friends' criticisms. I thought, this is really low. I'm talking nonfiction here, and they're sending me bathtub books, you know, literally, things like that. And I really enjoyed getting those books, but I'm not a warehouse, you know, I'm just a person. And after a few years of that, you just know, I'll get them at the library like everybody else. There's still publishers that send me things, in spite of everything I've done to try to say no. But sometimes they'll send me something and I just think, well, this is cool. This is really, you know, kids would really like this. I subscribe to several review journals, and I look at other ones online. I keep a list of all the books that get starred reviews throughout the year. And if anybody wants a copy of that list, it changes constantly, and I don't have a list of people I send it to. You've got my email on that handout. It's right at the very top there. Email me, and I'll just send you this year's. In fact, I'm doing it with a librarian from Utah now. And she's got all the starred reviews from last year, all the starred reviews from this year, and all the starred reviews from 2012. They're 12, they're different tabs. But it's just continually updated because new magazine. Believe me, if a book gets a starred review and it's nonfiction, I'm going to at least look at it. Sometimes I'll say, why would they like this, you know? Or sometimes I'll get a book and I'll think, I can't imagine a child checking this out. It's inconceivable to me. You know, the shelf sitters that we know will never go, and you know how you recognize them when you see them in advance. You know, this book will never appeal to a child. I don't care how wonderfully it's written. The illustrations are not child-friendly. They're not going to go for it. And I will regret purchasing this pristine book in 2 years, you know, that nobody ever checked out. So what I'm trying to do is find the best reviewed books, and then I'll look at catalogs, I'll look at the reviews, and I'll see, well, this book didn't get a star review, but they say it's pretty darn good. And let's face it, it's about a topic that boys particularly, we're always looking for books for boys. I'm going to grab this book, I want to read it, so I'm going to read it. And I do not talk about books I haven't read every word for what it's worth. And some of them are going to be a little bit higher level and may have things that you might not want your books. I'll try to mention that too. But I'm really trying to get a broad cross-section. And sometimes I'll just pick a book that's got a decent review, but I've never heard of this animal. We've got a book about a jaguarundi today. Have you ever heard of a jaguarundi? We have them in the United States. I'm not even sure if you say jaguarundi or jaguarundi, whatever it is. It looks like a cross between a cat and a weasel. I never heard of it, you know, and it's an interesting looking animal. So I'm continuing, and I'm always picking up books that I say, I'm just not interested in this topic. And then how many times do I get really interested and you realize how shallow you are, how really shallow you are, that you reject things before you even know anything about them. So I hope you're not like me. And then I want to tell you why I am carrying a cane, because it is a good story. Last month, on January 8th, my husband and I went to New York. I love Broadway musicals, and we went to spot every other year we go to New York to see Broadway shows. And in the afternoon, we went to one. In the evening, we went to another at the Public Theater in Greenwich Village. We took the subway back, got off the subway in Times Square, 42nd Street, walked up Broadway, and on 43rd, there was a deep curve, and I tell people it was this deep, but I really think I'm exaggerating. It was probably this deep, deeper than I was anticipating, and fell. And I've been telling people this. There were people around me, really nice people immediately, a couple dozen people. And people were holding my hands. And my husband fell with me, but he got right up. But people were calming me down, talking to me. Somebody said, you have to stand up. And they stood me up, and my right heel started rotating like the head in The Exorcist, you know? Oh, I never saw The Exorcist, but I heard about it. And I said, no, I don't think I can stand up. And I said, I think I broke a bone. And everybody said, you can't have broken a bone, you would be screaming. Well, they pulled me over to the curb, you know, flat on the ground, wanted to take me inside. It was a cold night, but not cold as Westerners understand the word cold, you know, not like that, not Minnesota cold night, you know. So I'm on the sidewalk, people are there cheering me up and telling me it can't be a broken bone. The ambulance guys come. There was police kiosk right there. They told me I couldn't have broken the bone because I wasn't screaming. And you don't think to say Midwesterners do not scream. It's not coos, you know. I mean, it's unseemly to scream. You just don't act like that in public, you know. You don't go around screaming just because you broke a bone, a major bone. And anyhow, my favorite part of the story is, in the ambulance, I'm flat on my back here, and I'm looking up, and there's the Empire State Building. I said to the ambulance guy, there was one in front with me, one my husband was in front of the other one. I said, I can't believe this. I've never seen the Empire State Building from a prone position. And he said, actually, you're not prone. You're supine. He said if you were prone, your face would be in the dirt, and seeing the Empire State Building from that vantage point would be really something. And I just cracked up, and I'm sure that totally convinced them I couldn't have broken a hip. And then they brought me into Bellevue Hospital, where my husband saw chained convicts waiting for treatment. Bellevue Hospital is something else. I was there for 2 weeks. It is not a Midwestern experience. I want you to know that. And I left New York in a blizzard and a walker, and I just graduated to a cane this week, and I'm very, very excited because I can actually sort of get around without people trying to run away from me. But this is my first speaking gig, and they said I should sit down, and I know I'm going to, but I hate sitting down. I like to move. As if you've seen me before, you know I like to move. But my stuff is down here. So I'm going to tell you particularly, you've already got this schedule, but I always like to show it. We'll have a break at 10:15. I've already told you that. And then you've got the handout. And I'm going to do the books in the exact same order they are on the handout. And the cover slide for every book will have a number on it. It matches the handout. It always blows my mind when somebody raises their hand and says, I've lost my place. Where are we? You know what I mean? I think it's kind of a no-brainer where we are. Number one, but I'm going to start with a poem, and we're going to get to this book. You probably have already seen this book, but it's the first book by Rita Dove. Open it. Go ahead. It won't bite. Well, maybe a little. More nip-like, a tingle. It's pleasurable, really. You see, it keeps on cooking. You may fall in. Sure, it's hard to get started. Remembering how to use a knife and fork? Dig in, you'll never reach the bottom. It's not like it's the end of the world, just the world as you think you know it. And I love it when a book does that to me, when you just come out of this and say, how come I didn't know this? How come I didn't understand it? What was going on here? Okay, so I always like to start the day with gross stuff. I learned that gross stuff makes everybody know. Hopefully I won't be bored all day. This is a notable book from last year. It came out late in 2012, so it's a 2013 book. Okay, this is a book that, when I read this section in the book, we have crickets. Crickets do not go into the water for any reason. They drown in water. But there's a certain kind of worm, and they're a hairworm, some kind of hairworm. Crickets eat dead insects, and that's what they do. That's normal. And they are frequently these little eggs of these hairworms in the dead insects that they eat. And you've got a picture right there of that little, of the little worm right there. It goes inside the cricket, and at some point in the development, it takes over the cricket, and crickets march into the water. And in the water, they drown because they cannot swim. And in the water, and when I turned this page, actually out loud, I went, there's a picture of the worm crawling out of the cricket as the cricket drowns. I was not expecting that. And, I'm in the living room, my husband is next to me, he said, what? This is disgusting. Boys would just love this. You know what I mean? The whole room would be full of kids who loved it. So that was one thing that came in here. And I read about this one in other books. It's a particular kind of cockroach. There's a wasp that lays its eggs inside the cockroach, and then as the eggs go out, they eat that great big wasp, and then leave just the shell of the wasp in there. If you read enough books about gross stuff, you do come across the same information in different formats. But there's a dead, wasp with it. Oh, I think that's disgusting. Raccoon with rabies. I like this picture just because he does look like he would eat anything that came along. Don't you think? It looks like an evil raccoon from a horror movie or something like that. And now we've got this flatworm that lives in the digestive tract of a small bird. And the amber snail eats the droppings of these birds. And what the snail does, it doesn't want the birds or anything to see it, so it hides, and it keeps its tentacles in. Well, this little parasite takes over the snail's tentacles there, and not tentacles, and then they wriggle. They get fat, and they go up. They cannot hide anymore. They wiggle, and birds find them, and they eat them. There's no hope for them. This book is just loaded with this kind of information. It is beyond disgusting, and it's just so much fun to show to kids. How about this one? Deadly, the truth about the most dangerous creatures on Earth. And you know, it says there are all these creatures, wild animals, any kind of creatures, who do all sorts of different things, just like people do. But you know, the box jellyfish up there on the upper left is the most dangerous animals on Earth. The second one, the bombardier beetle, sprays boiling, stinky acid at its predators. The electric eel, 500-volt electric shock. The spitting cobra, it spits venom into the eyes. These are really creatures that exist everywhere. Orcas are like the sharks and the jets, only a lot worse than the sharks. And they hang around in gangs and they terrorize other animals. They push seals off icebergs. They'll go up on the beach and knock seals into the water. They communicate by clicks and whistles, and they talk to each other all the time. They're just terrible, terrible things to have around you. You would not want them in any way. But it says all of these creatures are inhabitants of the earth, just as we are inhabitants of the earth, and they are all entitled to a place just like we are, and we should be good and share the earth. So we try to do that. I love forensic science. I'm going to stand up once in a while. I can't stand sitting down. And this is forensic science. I think, you know, that's real in right now. And she's got a bunch of historical mysteries, and I have always loved historical mysteries. You know, one of my favorites when I was a kid was the Grand Duchess Anastasia of Russia. You know, they took the whole royal family into the basement of the house in which they were prisoners, and they shot them all except they didn't find one body. Sometimes they say two bodies. There was a body missing. They decided it was Anastasia, and then there's a whole big thing with the imposter said, I am she. And then, you know, a few years ago, they found her body in Russia, and all the bodies were present and accounted for. But it was just a really good mystery. There were plays about it. There was a musical about it, you know, so I have that. And, you know, just good stuff. I always like this kind of stuff. We got Marie Antoinette, her son, the dolphin. He was, you know, he became very famous in books like Huckleberry Finn because nobody knew what happened to him. He was taken from his mother when he was a small child, and nobody knew what happened. So Huckleberry Finn meets these two con men, and one of them says he's the dolphin, the king of France, the real king of France, and so he shows up in a lot of books. Well, the original story was that he was, I think, about 7 when she was in prison. Her husband had been beheaded, and his older sister, they were all in prison. They took away him, and they could hear him screaming and crying and being tortured, but nobody knew what happened to them. A doctor who took care of him kept his heart. He said he died in prison, and I have his heart. He preserved it, and we still have that heart. Well, today they can do DNA testing, and it is the dolphin. You know, and just stuff like that. I love to read these stories, the true stories. We've got King Tut. We know that some of the injuries he had really came after he was dead and mummified. You know, some of these actual injuries weren't real injuries. And then how you can tell how long a person has been dead by the insects that are present in its body, and how you can tell how far along they are in the decay process. The guy on the right is the current king of Thailand. And his brother, the real king, died under extremely mysterious circumstances in 1946, which means the guy on the right has to be really, really old right now. And nobody's sure whether the current king of Thailand is a murderer or not. I did not know that story, not a clue. This is just an easy-to-read book, and I saw it. I think I got a copy of it, and I just had a free copy, and I thought, oh, second graders, this is the thing, you know. And they have different kinds of mummified animals. This is a ox, and this is thousands of years old, and they call it blue babe. It's been mummified, preserved in ice, and they finally decided that it had been killed by lions, and it was frozen. It started to freeze. Other lions came back, and it was too hard to eat, and that's how come it got preserved. But there's a lion's tooth in it, so they know it was killed by lions, and it was up in Canada. This one is a really good one. A couple of kids in Long Beach, California, in 1976, they reached for the mummy, and its arm breaks off, and there's a bone in there. Yeah, well, they thought it was just that waxwork thing, you know. Well, it wasn't. It was a real person. Was that freaking out or what? And they did research, and they found out who it really was. You know, Elmer McCurdy. This sounds cool. He was a robber. He had a 2-inch scar on his right wrist. The mummy has a name and a story. I wouldn't want to be the one that touched that arm and had that arm. Oh, yeah. Okay, toilet. Oh, this is a popular topic. And David McCauley, have you seen these easy readers that he's done? He's done one that's coming up later on how a toilet actually works. And toilets are always mysterious things to me. But this Cal, I thought this was quite tasteful of him. It's got a bone going down instead of some other kind of solid material, which is much more tasteful, as we all know. This tells how it works. And I thought, they are always vague to me, how this all works. But how the suction works, how it pulls things down, the dog looking very mystified that his bone is missing. And it tells how it goes down into the house, the septic tank, or into the sewer system. It tells you, you should try the purplish stuff down in there, how all that material in there separates. It does not really specify what the material is, but we all unfortunately know what the material is. But it tells you some vocabulary words to know when you're talking about this stuff. And I just thought this was really an interesting look at this for young kids. Why you shouldn't eat your boogers. Is that a great title for all time? And I read this one. Okay, and the reason is not that boogers are bad for you. It's about what's on your finger that touches the booger and puts it in your mouth. And most of us have fingers in our mouth way too often, as we know. This is not a good thing. We should try to make ourselves of any bad habits we have in that department. This is an original English book. It's originally from England. And they do grow stuff better, than we do. I just think they've got a real taste for it that isn't quite acceptable in America, But there's, why do paper cuts hurt so much? It's because nerve endings, we have so many nerve endings on our fingers, and it really hurts. I cut my finger. Why do we jump when we fall asleep? They think sometimes the body misinterprets the relaxation for falling, and you have to jerk out of the fall and try to pull yourself back together. That doesn't seem real logical. All the things that are in your head. Things like, why is yawning contagious? If you even hear the word yawning, or if anybody yawns, you start yawning. What is this about? Why does why does eating ice cream cause brain freeze? Well, if you eat it too quickly, your brain, our bodies were not modified to eat really cold food very quickly. We get that pain where you think you're going to die. You've never been in such agony, and then it passes very quickly, as we all know. But you have that moment of horror. Why do legs fall asleep? Nerves kind of get dead after you sit on a leg, for instance, for too long. Why dogs eat poop? The first one, this came out last year too, and after I read the other one, I thought I really need this title. It's very important that I read this book. Gross but true things you never knew about Adam. Why do owls collect poop? Well, they eat dung beetles. They love dung beetles. So they go around and collect poop, and then they line their nest with poop, and then it draws their food, the dung beetles who come in. Who would have thought? I had no idea they even ate dung beetles. Why do elephants die of hunger? And it's because their teeth, they get replacement teeth, and at some point they get no replacement teeth anymore, and they can't eat anything, so they starve to death. That is a very sad thing that I did not know. If you cut an earthworm in half, you end up in two worms. No, you don't. One kind you end up with two worms. A planarian, a flatworm that's found in many parts of the world. If you cut them, then you can end up with two. But most worms, you'll end up with two dead. Two dead parts of a worm. Okay, which frog has a visible beating heart that you can see? Well, this book does not have photographs, so I'm a great believer in looking at Google if you don't see it. And it's called a glass frog, and that's what it looks like from the top on the left. And on the bottom, you can actually see its heart. And now tell me kids wouldn't just, you show kids and you got a room full of, holy smoke, I had no idea anything like this actually existed. Yuck. You gross American history. And we get the story of all the things that people had to deal with that we do not have to deal with on a regular basis. Insects in the house in horrifying numbers were just common throughout most of history. So they didn't have, pesticides or anything like that. Bed bugs, almost everybody had them. They didn't have, doing laundry was not their thing. Beds were made of straw. So people, and mosquitoes, oh my gosh, how people dealt with mosquitoes and the diseases that they bring. You got to go to the bathroom in a place like this. And really, when you start thinking about it, what were they really like, And fortunately, how people would throw their waste, their chamber pots. You have a chamber pot, throw them out the window, might land on people in the street. There's a true story of a bride on her way to the wedding that somebody dumped out the chamber pot, and she just had to, unbelievable stuff. All the diseases you could get, like smallpox, that are pretty much, not that many people get them anymore, but how horrible they were. Just really gross stuff from history that makes history more exciting to young kids. Okay, the Donner dinner party. This is Nathan Hale, and he's Shannon Hale's brother, Shannon Hale. And he's got 3 graphic novels. And he calls them graphic novels because they are novels, but they're very factual, but they have people telling them. And the first one I'm going to show you later, the first one is about Nathan Hale, who is the guy that got hanged, as opposed to Shannon Hale's brother. They are not the same person, as you know. But, this is a really gross part of American history. The Donner dinner party. I've never heard it called that. The Donner party set out from Illinois. Look at it right there. I think one of them is Illinois. A lot of them went to Statesville, Missouri. And all these wagon trails west. And somebody had a shortcut that the Donner party decided to take. It was a bad time of the year to even consider taking a shortcut, but the people in charge of this party were not the brightest bulbs on the planet, apparently. So we got this graphic here, and we've got Nathan Hale on the gallows telling the story to his hangman and to the British officer in charge. This is a recurring theme through these nonfiction things. And they are in the dead of winter. They come to the Donner Pass, what is now the Donner Pass. It wasn't called that at the time, but they built separate shelters, and they had no food whatsoever. And they ended up eating anybody who died. They ate them. And this is historical fact, And this tells the story. It tells who didn't make it to California, great number who got eaten, all this kind of stuff. They did arrange it so you didn't have to eat your own family members, which was really helpful. I think they thought these things through. And, okay, so you got an idea, and I'll show you one of his others. The other one he's got is about the ironclad, the Monitor, and the Marionette. That's not going to show up today, but these are good, and it's a really appealing way. And the story of people actually eating each other is a pretty cool story when you think about it, and it really happened, Okay, well this one, this is for older kids, but it has so much information. Our blood vessels, our blood going through our body, we have, if they were laid out in a line, they would circle in the first 4 times. The blood vessels in our own body. This kind of things makes you stop. How is this possible? We cannot be this much. We tell about how we learn. Well, first of all, blood sacrifice has been around all through history. People are kind of obsessed with blood, but they didn't really know what it was. And they thought for a while, and coming to that, they could make blood. This is not true. We still haven't been able to make synthetic blood. So when they started understanding how things work, getting people to donate blood was a very big deal. We learn about how there's this, the horned lizard, and I always think of the Texas librarian. She said, we call him the horny-toed lizard, but you can't say that in middle school. Which, we all know things you can't say. How do we learn these things? We learn them the hard way, don't we? It's not, Somebody once, I play the piano, somebody introduced me to a middle school group of kids as a pianist. And this was not oh my gosh. But the different types of animals have different colors of blood. It's not all red. The cockroach, if you cut off its head in a certain way, it can live for quite a while without its head because of the way the blood clots. It will crawl around and everything without a head. This is disgusting, unbelievable. All these things about blood that you never ever knew before. And then it ends with the story of, one of the stories that got me was this plague pit. And they had them in Europe, people would get the plague, and they couldn't bury them in cemeteries. So many people were dying at once. And so they had these huge pits full of things. Well, they find them, they start digging them out, and they found this woman's skull with a brick stuck in it, in the mouth. And what is this about, And then they started looking into it, and lots of times if you died of the plague, blood came out of your mouth for a while afterwards. And they think that they thought this person was probably a vampire, and they stuck a brick in her mouth so that she couldn't go around biting people anymore. Tell me a room full of sixth graders wouldn't think that was really cool. Isn't that disgusting? Okay, now, this one, you just look at it. I saw the review, and I thought we got to look at this one, the top 10 for boys. And these are like Russell Ash. Do you remember he did a bunch of top 10 books? And they're heavily illustrated. The biggest castles in the world, right there on the left. We've got that. The biggest airports in the world. The coolest tree houses in the world. The top 10 anywhere. The highly evolved, the oldest surviving species right here. We've got the giant squid, who is unbelievable. The hardest to destroy, the jellyfish. There's one called the immortal jellyfish. You can't do it. And you can just go through here. It's sort of like the Guinness Book of World Records, but it's got a lot more pictures than the Guinness Book of World Records. And the biggest city in the world is Tokyo. I didn't know that. I'm not sure what I would have said. The second one is Seoul, Korea. I didn't know that. That surprised me. Mexico City is third. New York City is fourth, So who would have thought? You didn't know these things. Oh, for blood, the most dangerous animal in the world is the mosquito. Always tell kids, if you've ever, I bet everybody in this room is a serial killer of the most dangerous animal in the world. Which makes us, really good. Okay, we've got, this one is better for Paul, but has anybody seen this one? I thought it was really cool. We got a picture of a pumpkin at its brightest, most shining moment. And then we've all seen what happened. And there's penicillin on that pumpkin, which I did not know before. We got snails crawling on the pumpkin, leaving slime, and we see that pumpkin go downhill. Is this a great book for October to show kids and how this all works and what is actually happening with that pumpkin? I just read this and I said, now you can't even hardly tell that's what it was. And it happens pretty fast. We've all seen it. And it's just so cool to understand what is actually going on. I just get such a kick out of reading a book like this one. And this is a book by a man who's never had a book published. It's haiku. Waiting patiently in the pumpkin patch for his face, jack-o'-lantern. There's one for every month. Each window paints a masterpiece, personally signed, your friend, Jack Frost. Snowmen stand very still, hoping the noon sun won't notice they are there. I just thought the illustrations, like this picture here, isn't that just lovely, Jack Frost? And we see that all the time this time of year, and we don't probably appreciate it enough. 13 art illusions children should know. One thing, anything that's an optical illusion, they love books of that. I would take books, and some of my favorites are out of print, and you can't use them anymore. But they love to look at pictures like this. And I love this picture. The name of the picture is Escaping Criticism. It was painted in the 1880s. The kid is crawling out of the picture frame here. We've got how they use perspective. The Romans had perspective 2,000 years ago, and then it wasn't until like the 1500s that they found how to do that. They had all those flat-looking pictures, and now we can see that there's depth in this picture. That was a big breakthrough when they figured out how to do that again. These modern things that are really, they make you kind of giddy to look at them when you're, if you look at these pictures close up, they're really interesting. Things like this, oh, they love these. This is a vegetable garden, and then you turn it upside down, and they're so much fun. Everybody likes these things, and we all like to be fooled and have fun with these pictures. So I always grab anything that's on optical illusions, and I wish there were more because the kids would always fight over them. Okay, I don't know why this wasn't a notable children's book from the American Library Association, because every time, I'm going to tell you books that just sort of blew me away. I'll pick up things that I don't think are going to be that interesting, and you can really tell when I got a good one when I make my husband read it. He always is under protest, you know. It's a children's book, you know. Okay, well, read it. You're going to love it. Well, this is Shark Bay is in Australia. And by the way, this is a series from Mifflin and Scientists in the Field. Believe me, they are just an incredible series, and they're wonderful. Somebody's nodding at me. They're just, you know, you really are not going to go wrong with reading one of them. We're going to have others. Here's Shark Bay. It's very unusual because it has a lot of different animals in this area, and many, many different kinds. Well, they have these dolphins. And about 25 years ago, a fisherman reported a dolphin with a terrible, terrible growth on its face. They did not know what kind of a disease this dolphin had. And they sent people to start investigating, and it's not a growth. It's a tool. This dolphin is using a tool. And the tool is a basket sponge. And it's shaped like a basket. They go down to the bottom of the ocean. They stick one over their nose, and then they can dig around at the bottom of the ocean without hurting their nose. And when they're done digging, and they use them for less than an hour, and then they go get a new one, they throw it up and they eat the fish that are in there. They collect fish in there, and then they go get a new basket sponge. And nobody knows of any other dolphins in any other place except Shark Bay who do this. And, you know, you're just kind of reading this, and this is astounding. How do they know this? And, but not all the dolphins in Shark Bay do it either. It depends on whether the dolphin's mother does it. And she teaches her children how to do it. It's just unbelievable. And the book starts with a story, and this, you know, you kind of stop quote. They really believe that dolphins are second only to human beings and intelligent, and it's based on the size of their brain in relationship to their body. We have the biggest percentage of our body is brain of any animal on Earth, but dolphins are second to us. Well, it starts with a story about a dolphin trainer who was training. He trained these dolphins to do things together so they could do dolphin shows. And okay, he's telling these two dolphins, I want you to do something together that surprises me. And they looked at each other, they went down, and a few seconds later they came up and they jumped simultaneously in the air together, which he was just astounded. They had heard, you know, they understood when he said do something together, and then they blew water out their noses while they were at the peak. And he was just, how can they possibly know this? Which is my reaction as well. And okay, so there we have the, you know, bottlenose dolphin is second to us. We have 7% of our weight is usually brain. Chimpanzee 2.3, gorilla 1.6, cat 1.0, not real bright in spite of what we may say. And, okay, dolphins, as we know, are very endangered. And you have to, if you catch them, you have to release them. But they get caught in fishing nets all the time. And this is a dolphin, and those scars are from fishing nets. She was released, but she still has she was badly damaged by those fishing nets. Well, we also have the dolphins who will go down and get shells and play with them, and then they twist them around so they can get any animals that are in there out of there and eat those animals. You know, just incredible things that you wouldn't think of, something that they could do. We learn about how the dolphin babies know where their mothers are by echolocation. And it's all echolocation, just like bats with dolphins. And they will know when their mother is done doing whatever she's doing, hunting, so they can go feed on their mother. They understand all of this stuff. The guy dolphins hang out together and practice sexual behaviors, or trying to practice on females, you know. And the most successful dolphin is named Red Notch. And And they think that maybe Redknapp is a father of quite a few dolphins. And they think dolphins can understand that they are related to each other. They know when they are, this is just mind-boggling stuff. You're reading this, and how is this possible? This is a woman, she's an American scientist. She's been in this area for about 20 years studying these dolphins. And she'll sit there and she'll write down what a dolphin is doing every minute. She'll follow a dolphin, and every minute she writes in her notebook what that dolphin is doing. She said, if you write what you think is important, you may miss the really important thing. So you write down everything they do, and then you have a record. Well, I just, I said to my husband, you have to read this book. And he finally did, and he was just blown away. And there's a female dolphin named Puck, who's one of the spongers, and he was just totally smitten with Puck, and he decided he needed to see Puck, and he was hot to go to Shark Bay, Australia, so he could see Puck. And now this is what happens when you read a really good book like that. You sort of get a little bit carried away by the whole thing, but it just blows my mind. Now here's another dolphin tale, and this is from Hurricane Katrina. There were 8 dolphins who were in, one of the oceanarium type places. When Katrina was coming, they had more than 8 dolphins in there. They had quite a few, a couple dozen dolphins. They managed to get hotels and motels with swimming pools to take some of the dolphins, but they had 8 they couldn't place. And they just let them be in the oceanarium and took the chance they'd be blown out to sea, whatever happened. Well, they came back, several days after Katrina went through, and all the dolphins were gone. They had no idea what to do. They took a boat out in the ocean around there, and they started making the calling noises to come get your food to dolphins. All these dolphins had never found their own food. They were raised in captivity. And the dolphins just swam right up to the boat. Yeah, you're reading this, and how is this possible? Like this is a mind-boggling thing. And we know the kids would be as thrilled by this as we are to see these pictures. And it tells about them, and the different things. I just thought that was so cool to read about something like that. And this is what we don't know about animals. And a lot of these books are up here. I know that this book is here, I have it. Okay, this is California, 2005. I believe it's off San Francisco. And somebody saw that there was a whale, and he was caught in crab traps near the town. And they sent out 4 divers to try to release this whale. And they went, and this is this huge, huge whale. Do we need the lights on up here? Can we get them out here or not? I don't know. Anyhow, they went out, and they started pulling off these ropes. And this is this huge, huge whale. And they went, and they managed to free it. And the whale started swimming away. They were thrilled, these 4 divers. All of a sudden, the whale turns around and starts coming back. And what it did, it went to each diver, and it bumped each diver. I get cold chills on it. And they think, I do, it bumped each diver. There are things we do not understand, and it just blows your mind. This is a really simple book. Okay, obviously I'm on the oceans here, but there's some good stuff with oceans. This is not a great scan here. I do want to say, I use this with kids too, the PowerPoint. When I finally figured out that I didn't need to have all the books with me all the time, but show the kids pictures. I just want to say right now, you can get so many photos online of the interior spreads of the book. And when you get it really saves me so much grief, and this is not real good. But this one, you just can find these things online, and you can make your own PowerPoint. And if you've got kids that want to volunteer and are computer literate, this would be like the best job they ever got to volunteer. It would be finding interior scans of books to put together. Highest tide in the world, Canada. The Bay of Fundy. Anybody ever? I've been there. I've ridden the tide in, and it was not that high, but it was like a 3-foot wall. You could see coming right at you, hot tide. Just a wall. It's incredible, Okay, La Nina, what it's doing to our weather, and don't we know? Do we need to hear any more about it? The biggest fish in the sea, and how they just have their krill in their mouth. Is anybody? I was in a museum once. You could touch the krill. They have the baleen in their mouth, and it's just like they just inhale fish in their mouth, tiny little fish. And there it is, right there. I just thought, this is really interesting. Okay, the humpback whale, so called because of the way their bodies hump when they when they jump into the water right there. And they migrate from New England to the Caribbean Sea every single year and back. And it's a very heavily traveled route by boats and everything like that. So they have to be very careful not to be hit by boats. And the other thing that is beyond belief is the ocean pollution, how much crap is in our ocean. And I always thought, and I know you would feel the same way, we do not put bad things in the oceans because we're not near any oceans, right? But most of the stuff in the ocean comes from rivers, like the rivers that go through our towns. And, the way we are so profligate with everything is just terrible. And animals, we're killing marine animals all the time with all the things that are in the water. They say there are areas in the Atlantic Ocean where you can sail for a week to 10 days and just see garbage all around you. They tend together in certain areas. And I just think the way we use stuff is unbelievable. But the humpback, songs, the whales, and then this one, and see what a seal can do. A very simple picture book. Says seals are bullet-shaped for a reason. That's why they can swim so well. And this is just a simple look at the life of the seal, how they propel themselves into the water, how their heart rate slows down, and they do need air. They can stay under for a little while, but they can't stay under forever. And of course, while they're down there, they're looking for fish to eat, but they are also whales. That's their number one, their number one food is seals, so they can get eaten just as well. And this is just a neat, simple look at the life of a seal, and everybody loves seals. Jim Arnowski, who does really lovely books, he has animals that are usually found pretty close to the shore in more or less shallow water sometimes. But stingrays, they're made of cartilage, and they can sting you real bad, which is why they call them stingrays. And they will, if you step on one in shallow water, you will get stung, almost certainly. But they're beautiful, beautiful animals. The porcupine fish, he does these really beautiful full-page things. Black-tipped shark, they can be pretty close to under the water too, much closer than we would think a shark would ever get to us. And this just shows the book. Many of the pages open out to 3, which is impossible to scan. I found this online, but just really neat pictures of different sea animals that are right there. Weird sea creatures, don't we all love those? And these are mostly found in the deepest depths, and we're finding all sorts of things in the deepest depths that we never knew existed before. And that's my favorite. If you've heard me before, I always mention the deep sea anglerfish, And it's so beautiful, and that's a female. And it collects males, little tiny things that become a part of the female body and cease to exist as a separate entity. But I can't imagine being attracted to that, even if I were an angler. This is the world's smallest shark, and it's not dangerous to us. It's only 10 inches long. It's a pygmy shark. Isn't that kind of cool? Okay, National Geographic. You've seen these. They're so colorful and so cool. I'm really so amazed at leafy sea dragons right now. And I showed you one last year, I know, because I just can't believe they exist. That's an animal. And it's really good at disguising itself, as you can see. We've got pictures like this of a manatee baby. Everybody loves manatee. Which of these starfish was your favorite? That kind of thing. This is the lion's mane jellyfish. And just beautiful, beautiful pictures. This sponge, which is an animal, and it looks like that. And sand dollars and horseshoe crab. All these beautiful things that young kids like to look through. My favorite, the giant squid. I love giant squid. They are so disgusting. And when I started book talking, nobody knew for sure that nobody ever had a picture of a living one, And that was such a thrill when they got a picture of it. Well, this is the sperm whale, and its mortal enemy is the giant squid. And really, finding all these parrot-like beaks in sperm whales was what really got them going on the giant squids, because they started looking for giant squids in areas with sperm whale. And they found that whales, the sperm whales, had literally thousands of giant squid beaks in their stomach when they dissected them. And there are two scientists dissecting a sperm whale, which would be a real fun job, in my opinion. They're very smelly and disgusting, I understand. And they would also put cameras on seals and send them down to the depths and then take off the camera so they could, things that you would not consider possible. They would find these giant squids. This is the first photograph of a living giant squid that we got. It got caught in some Japanese fishing boats, in the ropes and they brought it up. They tried to get it free, but it died. So it wasn't living for very long. But you get an idea of it. This is a scientist, and that is the eye of a giant squid, and it's about the size of a dinner plate. Now, you just look at this. They're almost never giant squids. They're in deep water. We almost never see them above. But this was found in Spain in October this year. This was on the beach, this giant squid. So that was really, isn't that incredible? I just can't believe giant squid. And that's the point of the next book I'm going to show you, which is sensational. Finding Bigfoot, okay? And this is an Animal Planet book. And you approach this whole topic, if you're like me, you've got to be kidding. Everybody's been looking for Bigfoot for how many years? And nobody's ever come up with anything remotely possible that there's anything like this. Well, okay, and of course, that's the most famous photograph of Bigfoot. And there are people who say it's a complete fake, that this suit had the head sewn on wrong, so the head was permanently in this direction, which is why he's always looking this way. Okay, but this book tells us right off the bat about things that people thought could not exist that did in fact turn out to exist. And I thought this is pretty smart of them. And one of them is the giant squid. Can you see it right down there near the bottom? Okay, that people didn't think that really existed, and by gum it did. Right above it, we've got the giant panda. Last book I told you, I showed you a new picture book called Mrs. Harkness and the Panda. This American socialite went to China because there was a mythological creature called the panda, and her husband had died trying to find one. So she went to find one too. And she did. She found it. She took this baby panda back with her, not knowing what it ate or anything, deciding it was a female, and it wasn't. It was a male. And you can go see that panda. It is in the Museum of Natural History here in, which one? Museum of Science. Which one would it be in Chicago? Field Museum. Okay, right here in Chicago. You can see it. It didn't even live a year. And how cool is that? She takes a panda out of its natural environment, a baby, away from its mother, not knowing anything about it, kills it fairly quickly, and that's okay. And then, okay. And then this one right here is the coelacanth. Right here, at the bottom right, a fisherman in South Africa in 1938 found this fish. He'd never seen one like it. He took it to a scientist, and they thought this fish had been extinct. And this book was a book about, and it's by somebody who lives in DeKalb, Illinois. Sally Walker won the Cyber Award. I bet a lot of you know her. And it's just a great book about how everybody assumed this fish was extinct, and it wasn't extinct in any way. It's, it's still around, and people, they're not very good to eat, I guess, and they don't look very appealing to me. But there's Mrs. Harkness and the panda about the other one. So it tells you how you should look for Bigfoot with an open mind. But everything you read, you have all these gazillions of people looking for Bigfoot. Nobody has ever found anything. Which, as one person who spent years looking for it said, that kind of tells you something. But I don't know, whatever. Okay, that poem I read to you at the first. This is from Caroline Kennedy's book. And you're thinking, Caroline Kennedy's put together a children's book, big deal. And then I got the book, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. And I love that first poem I read to you this morning. But liberty, I love this. I pledge acceptance of the views so different that make us America. To listen, to look, to think, and to learn. One people sharing the earth, responsible for liberty and justice for all. I wish every one of us could memorize that poem and just think about it, not just for the people in my team or my party, but everybody deserves liberty and justice. And beautiful thing, the way a crow shook down on me, the dust of snow from a hemlock tree, has given my heart a change of mood, saying, save some part of the day I had ruined. By Robert Frost. There's a terrible green monster who lives under my bed. I hear his long white teeth click. He's waiting to be fed. I shiver underneath my sheets and squeeze my eyes up tight. Maybe if I lie real still, he won't eat me up tonight. He taps me on the shoulder. I don't know what to do. He looks at me and says, I'm scared. Can I get in with you? Good stuff, right? You know, and we always know that funny works real well. Now, I have to sit down and move to the next portion, which is not as seamless when I'm not on my own computer. And I have to also sit down for a minute and open up the next one. So, oh, wait a minute. Where are we? I thought these were all open. Wait a second. I thought there was a... Oh, I'm opening. I'm going to get there. I'm going to get there. Okay. Got another one. That didn't take me too long, did it? Okay, frog song. And this is Spirin, the Russian immigrant who did the illustrations on this. And about frogs have a song whenever they have enough moisture to keep gooey eggs, squirmy tadpoles, and hoppity elves from drying out. Okay, in Borneo, I just put these because these were so unusual. I thought I'd put these. The four-lined tree frog lays her eggs on a leaf dangling over a stream. She stirs up a foamy nest to keep the eggs moist, and when the tadpoles break out, they plop into the water. That's very creative and innovative, I would say. Very not labor-intensive. Suriname Cove carries 100 eggs in the skin on her back. She has no tongue. That always gets me, no tongue, you know? So she dips and dives in the mud for food. The male midwife toad in Spain carries a string of sticky eggs and keeps them moist. How many kids wouldn't like to know about these incredible things? I really wouldn't want to see with my own eyes, I don't think. And, you know, we've got the frog that makes the back noise. And this one and the next one is the noisy frog sounds. The different kinds of sounds that different frogs make. The make frog. We've got some toads will they make tweet. And we've got a close relative of frogs, the salamander. Salamander doesn't have a throat pouch to sing with. The chorus frogs are croaking in a creek, creak, 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 creak. All these different noisy frogs and the sounds they make. And then we get Darwin's frogs. Anybody seen this book? Charles Darwin collected this frog. And another scientist looking at it several years later was astounded. It was a male frog and it appeared to be pregnant. Okay, this did not seem likely, you know? And furthermore, it gave birth through its mouth. When they found the real ones, they started looking at them. And what they now know is the female lays the eggs, and the male eats or slurps up the eggs at some point, and they go into his vocal pouch, you know, like his vocal cords right there, and then at some point he burps them out. Okay, you're reading this and you're just kind of, you got to be kidding. How is it possible that they're, and there they are coming out of this male frog, and it shows what they look like. And there in the bottom left is one that with a pregnant male frog with the, you know, bloated up with all the little babies in his pouch. Who ever heard of such a thing? You know, I read these things and they look like they look like sardines packed in a can, as it says right there. You're reading this book and you're just, I can hardly believe this, you know, that things are going on. And there he is again, that pregnant male toad that's going to give birth out all these baby frogs. And they're afraid it may be extinct, so we should probably go try to find one quickly, but they're only in Chile, so it'll be quite a journey for us all. Okay, another mystery here, the secrets of Stonehenge. And I love mysteries. I said that too, historical mysteries, and Stonehenge is one of the all-time great ones. And this is the latest theory on how Stonehenge and why Stonehenge was built. And of course, there are so many things we do not know or understand about Stonehenge. But you know, they brought these monstrous stones from probably 250 kilometers, which is about 160 some miles. You know, this is in primitive times, and they probably rolled them on logs and floated them over water to get them there. And tells why they think they were built. You know, they're not 100% sure of everything, but how it was done, how they got those stones up on top. These are primitive times. You know, how did they get them up there thousands of years ago? Why did they do this? They have bodies. They know they dug up people. This guy, they know he was born in Switzerland. What is not, you know, and one of his kneecaps was gone, and so he was terribly injured at some point. And you're just, this is called the Amesbury Archer. You're just reading this, and you just, this is incredible. I always think Stonehenge is one of the great mysteries, you know. It's just so much fun to read about. Okay, I thought this was really fun. They sent me a copy of it, and I could not help myself. I had to read it. And I think that, you know, the kind of girls that read people, or, you know, this is the kind of thing, you know, that you're going to, and people who are dead, that are real, they still have sex appeal, you know? And, okay, so we're going to start with that. They think this guy's really near the top, and it's Che Guevara. And, of course, he's been dead for quite some time now. You look at that, he was one good-looking guy. You know, there's no question about that in my eyes. And they tell you his life story, films about him, what happened to his body after he died. There's a little section up here which means it's for older kids, the story of his sex life, about which everybody is 100% sure. Quotable things about him, why he matters, why he is important in history. So you got this guy. We go on, here's just a few of the people. Now, Coco Chanel, man, she was really pretty. We've got Jim Thorpe, Bessie Coleman, who was a female pilot, African-American, the first woman to get a pilot's license, who was an American, and she was African-American at a time when they were so discriminated against. Albert Camus, I never thought of him as particularly hot, but I have had a crush on Frederick Douglass for a long time. And somebody said I didn't know you could have a crush on dead people. I would take it anytime. She is so good looking, a moral authority. Oh man, you know, just got it all. My Bruce Lee, a good looking dude. Oh yeah, Ava, not so much for me. Roberta Clemente, you know, I just think these guys are really cool. And why do they matter? I just thought this was really a fun book. It's like reading a gossip magazine. It's just fun, you know? Okay, so, but isn't that part of the joy of reading? It's just a plain have fun. Okay, the scoop in this is one of those disgusting colonial life things which we all enjoy reading about. This tells about how disgusting the houses were. The average colonial house was 20 feet by 20 feet square. Gee, you know, and that is really tiny. It was, of course, usually really filthy. We learn about how people got dressed, what they wore, and all the men wore breeches, but boys were dressed like girls until they were 3 or 4 years old. They wore dresses or even older than that, as we know, and their hair was uncut. People were, the women and the children were put in staves, and they wore them all the time. And they thought they couldn't stand up straight without their staves, and we think we would die if we had to wear staves. But that's why people were so tightly compressed and had to stand up on straight, because they had wood, you know, holding them in and holding them together. And it looked fiercely uncomfortable, in my opinion. Okay, Ben Franklin, Russell Friedman. You cannot beat this combination. Okay, this is Ben Franklin, the way he probably looked as a teenager. Ben Franklin, you know, you read about him. He may not have been as good looking as some of these guys, you know, but he would have been fun to have around, no question about it. And, you know, we probably all read Gene Fritz. We know he was a real good swimmer when he was a kid. He held a kite, so that would pull him down. He didn't have to swim in the water. Well, he made his money, really, with Ben Franklin's Almanac. And the beauty of that, he started publishing it, and you had to buy a new one every year. And he made a fortune, and by the time he was 42, he retired. And he just resolved to do good works for people. And he invented all sorts of incredible things. He got involved in politics. And this is a picture of him in England. This really happened. He was in a room at one of the palaces called the Cockpit, and he had to stand in the middle of the room for all the British politicians insulted him and insulted the American colonies, and it was the worst hour and a half of his entire life. He loved the ladies, and the ladies loved him. But one thing I did not know, and this blows my mind, everybody's rushing to Concord. Part of what I'm hoping to do today is hope you see some books today that you know you could use, that you would have fun using. So I was in Phoenix last year presenting, and at lunchtime somebody brought in a pile of books for one of the teachers in the room, and it was paperback biographies of Ben Franklin. I talked about this before lunch. Do you know that Ben Franklin never got actually married in a courtroom or a church? It was a common law marriage. And the reason for this was she had married another man who turned out to be a real scoundrel. He took all of her money and went west, and they never heard from him again. And they didn't know whether he was alive or dead. And if he came back, terrible lawsuits. So they started living together as man and wife. Well, this pile of paperbacks were all biographies of Benjamin Franklin. And you know, the Common Core wants us to think, not just give us the facts. I can tell you, Ben Franklin was born in 1706. He was the 16th of 17 kids, which must have been really something. This is not the kind of thing most of us are going to retain. I bet you're all going to remember he never got married, though. You know, that's really interesting. Okay, well, this book, this tiny little paperback, skinny paper book that they brought enough for everybody in that grade, there was a picture, an illustration of Ben Franklin's wedding. It just makes me, you know, who wrote this book? Who fact-checked this book? He never got married. It's not possible. They just started living together as man and wife. And that people are putting this stuff up. Believe me, when you read Russell Friedman, you are in good hands. Believe me. You gotta believe it. It's really good stuff. He's going to keep us entertained and educated. His son, he had 2 kids. One was legitimate, if you can have a legitimate child in a common law marriage. I'm not sure. How does that work? Does anybody know? This guy was his son. He was illegitimate. Nobody knows who his mother was. So Ben Franklin got around more than we might think, you know? But this guy stayed loyal to England during the Revolutionary War, and they never spoke again after that. His son. So, you know, he was not an easy man to be a son of, I should think. And, of course, he went to France and fought, you know, tried to promote our team during the Revolution. They loved him in France. He wore beaver hats, and everybody dressed like that in America. Yeah, likely. And the women were all in love with him, you know, and then he came back to America. What he discovered is incredible. And Kathleen Krull, K-R-U-L-L, she has a new book that I read too late to get in here, but it's Ben Franklin, Scientist. And you read that, and you're just kind of, you got to be kidding. How could he do all of these things? And she's explaining things that I didn't really understand, what incredible adventures of it, but just focusing on his science. Ben Franklin is a great guy, and that's his legitimate daughter, Sally Baby. Okay, and of course we can compare and contrast that with a gazillion other biographies, including the new Kathleen Krull. And there's Nathan Hale's first book, and it's about Nathan Hale, like I said. You know, here he is, one dead spy. We got his hangman. Okay, we're going to meet this guy. He has 2 booths. He got the first book from a one-legged prisoner. It was a gift. And the second book he found floating in the water after a battle. So he's got these 2 kinds of books. We got Nathan Hale waiting to be hanged, and the papers haven't arrived yet, so they need to start talking. So the hangman asked Nathan Hale to tell him his story. And he tells the story of how he became a spy for our team. And he wasn't a real good spy, you know. I mean, he didn't have a lot of experience or training in this department. And he was captured by the British. And, of course, he was hanged. And we know the story, but he's telling it out. All these other books by Nathan Hale, the papers still haven't come, so he's telling another story from American history. So there's 3 so far. It's kind of a nice premise, and they're a really fun way to learn a really good story of how this happened. You know, that Battle of New York and Long Island, it was not a good battle for our side during the Revolutionary War, and you know, there's some books about it, real interesting stuff. But this one, Revolutionary Friends, this kind of stopped me, but it's such a good story. You know, the Marquis de Lafayette was 19 years old, and he got interested in the Revolutionary War, and he wanted to come to America and meet George Washington. And he organized troops of men and bought a ship. He outfitted them. He took them to America to fight in the Revolutionary War. He really wanted to meet George Washington. He did that, and Washington just loved him. Lafayette was injured in a battle, and the doctor told him, Washington told the doctor, treat him as if he were my own son. They just loved each other here. And then the book, after starting out like a picture book, all of a sudden, you know, halfway through it turns into this more dense book with smaller pictures. And I don't know whether they ran out of money or what. But I thought it was a good story. Well done. Okay, but this one. And I got a book by her coming up. I've been telling people, she lives in one of the northern suburbs. And I Googled it this morning. I could not find, do you know which one she lives in? Does anybody know where Barb Rosenstock lives? She is close enough you could bring her to your school, okay? I just want you to know that. She's really close to here. And there's a contact me, but it doesn't say, but do you know which suburb? Which one? That's it. I'm sure that's it. Carol Stream. Okay. Well, I got another book by her that's coming up that has gotten so far 5-star reviews this year. It just came out this year. Hardly any books get that many star reviews. And she is also a fan of the Betsy Tacy books, as am I. Ha, ha, ha. So we communicate. And she sent me a copy of them and of the new one. And I was looking at the star reviews. I told you I keep a spreadsheet. I said last year, like 18 books got star reviewed last year. That's it, 5-star reviews. And you are in rarefied company. And people are saying it's a Caldecott contender. And she said, from their writings to the committee's ears, let it happen. I'll show you that in a little bit. But this is just kind of cool. But I don't like this illustration. I like him for me, but not for kids, you know? So I just want to say that. And maybe you think he'll do it for kids. But we got the story of Thomas Jefferson, who read all of the books in his father's library. By the time he was about 6, by the time he was 6, he read every book in his father's library. But his father only had like 50 or so books. It wasn't like today where if we're lucky, we have books everywhere. And it tells how he bought books all of his life, how he organized books by size. Is that how, I mean, really, I have shelves for big books, and it can be a variety of subjects, but really we can't have every book being able to house all the tall books. And how he bought books, especially the years he lived in Paris. He bought more than a book a day, many, many more. And books were very expensive at that time. And when the Library of Congress burned down, thanks to the British who burned it down during the War of 1812, he sold the Library of Congress. I love the British normally, but you know they were not good to us. And he got over 6,500. It's still the foundation of the Library of Congress today. This one, has anybody seen this book? Is anybody? It's up here. It's a big book. It's that blue one right under there. Take a look at it. This one, I got some star reviews, and I looked at it, and I thought, this is weird. And it's a big book. Stan Rogers, a Canadian singer, you know, and he had this song about the Northwest Passage. And so I Googled, you know, and listened to the song on YouTube. And here's, for just one day I would take the Northwest Passage to find the hand of Franklin reaching for the Beaufort Sea. Well, John Franklin tried to get a passage up over the North Pole to get to Asia, to the other, and people have been trying to do that all through history. It's probably going to work pretty soon, the way the ice is melting everywhere. We are probably going to achieve this goal. But through most of history, it wasn't going to happen. And all sorts of bad things happened to people who tried to find a Northwest Passage. Well, Stan Rogers is dead now, which I did not know before this book came out, because I heard the name and everything. But he tried to trace the roots of the various people who tried to find the Northwest Passage. And here he is in his van up here. And in the background, there's Franklin's ship. John Franklin led an expedition to find the Northwest Passage in the 1840s. and it vanished. It totally vanished. Nobody knew what happened to it, but we do know now, and that is so cool that we know now, and I'm going to show you a picture. There's the Native Americans who were there, the Native Canadians in this case. But he's got the words to the song, and you can play the song for the kids. It's just intriguing to me. If anybody's still got this book, anybody still got it? You got it? Is this cool to talk to kids about? You know, this is the story of the Franklin expedition. And this is a dead body they dug up. These bodies froze, you know. So they're really good shape comparatively for bodies that have been there for over 160 years. They're in really good condition. And this is just, again, kids just love this picture, you know. So if you've got that book, bring it in with this one because it's beyond cool and disgusting, but really fascinating. And their kind of current thinking is they died probably as much of lead poisoning from all the canned food they had along with them and from starvation, various methods. But they've done all these tests on them. But this tells the story of the Northwest Passage. When you played a song in there, the book is really fascinating. I just thought it was really, really a fun book to look through. And there's a map of what we're going for when we're looking for that Northwest Passage. Information about various people who tried to find it over here. And it's a Canadian book, but I bet it's a song a lot of people will recognize if you listen to Stan Rogers singing it. Your life as a pioneer on the Oregon Trail. Oh, gee, you know, it's just disgusting again. One of those things you never think about. Most women had like 2 dresses, and, you know, one dirty and one dirtier probably. You know, there wasn't a lot of laundry done on the Oregon Trail. I don't think they had irons or anything like that. Permanent press had not been invented. And, you know, basically everybody walked because the horses, the oxen couldn't carry people plus all the other stuff they were doing. So if you were going to Oregon, you were going 2,000 miles, you were going to be walking. So I had not thought about it quite like that before. And all the diseases that could take over, all the bugs, how there wasn't clean water, all these people were going to the same place at the same time. Not a good situation for anybody there. But it just really is an interesting look at a time that we're glad we didn't live in. Very glad we did not live in. 1868, Henrietta Leavitt was born. She graduated from Radcliffe, and she got a job at Harvard. Looking in the observatory, they would look at pictures that were taken of stars, and she started noticing that stars had varying degrees of brightness, and she started making sense of what that meant. And what that ultimately meant was that we were able to judge distances, how far away the distances were. And this is just, you know, I don't find the picture super appealing, but when you think that women just didn't get to do a darn thing, and she is the most important person in that we could map the universe and get an idea of how big things actually were. And we get other women pioneers. Ruth Elder, flying solo. It says she never lost her composure or her lipstick, no matter what she did. And she was a beauty queen, and she wanted to fly, and she even tried to cross the Atlantic, but she came down. Fortunately, she was near a boat who picked her up, and she made it all the way to America. I love this picture. She was in a flying contest. They flew from the West Coast to Cleveland, but nobody had any really good maps or anything like that. And one obliging farmer plowed an arrow in the field pointing to Cleveland, so everybody loved that guy. You know, you could get there, you might make your way to Cleveland. And she was one of the top finalists. And she was totally convinced that one day women would be flyers, women would be going to the moon, women would be astronauts, all that kind of thing. And another woman, Betty Skelton, the same kind of thing. Hot to be a pilot, very unusual. She could do all sorts of barnstorming things. She liked to fly with bare feet, which was really dangerous because it's very cold up there. She'd almost freeze her tootsies off sometimes. She was on the cover of Look magazine because she trained to be an astronaut. But if you read that book that came out a few years ago, Almost Astronaut, they trained a bunch of women to be astronauts, and they never had any intention of letting them be an astronaut. It was absolutely appalling the way they treat women. It just gets your gander up to be fun.